failure is your friend. And I actually really believe that. Like, now, when you're going through failure, it does not feel like your friend. You're like, this is freaking horrible, right? But when you actually come out the other side, if you can learn the things that the failure is seeking to teach you, that will be a game changer for you. I actually believe that what holds us back is not the economy and not the inflation rate and not the interest rates and not all the things. I know that all of those are factors, but what holds most people back is the fear of failure. It's kind of like, well, what happens if I try, if I put it all out there, if I invest my time, my energy, the most precious resources I've got, maybe even some money, and what if I fall flat on my face? Have you ever known anyone who's experienced that?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Flourish Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about business, flourishing in business.
What?
So I know, Abe, you are quite the businessman. And so what are a few things you can share with us?
Well, first, I think we want to, before we dive right into that, I think it's really important to appreciate just how much the economy has changed. And this is really interesting because when, my parents' generation were growing up, maybe yours, I don't know, but it was sort of like the whole idea was getting a job with the man, in a big factory or maybe for government, or maybe you join the army and some big entity, some really big person is going to take care of you, right? And all you got to do is kind of be a good employee, just show up, and then you were sort of guaranteed for life, right? And I feel like that whole model is completely different today.
Oh, yes.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I started learning about, even 10 years ago, I would remember hearing from entrepreneurs saying, that was an option for my parents' generation, but they would sit in a job for 30 plus years. That is almost unheard of nowadays. Yeah. And because of how the economy's changed, that savings isn't really there for a lot of people, just with the inflation and the cost of life. Everything's changed. So yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that for a long time there was anger about that, out there in the sort of ethos. It was kind of like, oh man, we're not being taken care of anymore. And then I think what has emerged in that vacuum has been a whole bunch of people who've been empowered by that. If the man's not going to take care of me, if government's not going to take care of me, if I'm not going to go work in this big factory forever and have guaranteed employment and guaranteed benefits and guaranteed XYZ, then what am I going to do? I'm going to sit here and feel sorry for myself. Maybe that's an option. Or am I going to learn to entrepreneur? And so I actually think it's the most exciting time to be alive in human history. I know that might sound crazy because out there's a lot of gloom and doom, but I actually feel like I wake up a lot of the time thinking to myself after some other initial thoughts when I wake up, oh my goodness, it's early and I have a recurring issue with anxiety. So that often hits me first thing in the morning. But then I think how lucky I am to be alive right now, because I have the opportunity to reach and work with people literally on the other side of the planet that even 50 years ago, I would not have been able to have. And you have that too. What do you think about that?
I think it's amazing. And I think, you're saying you can feel sorry for yourself or feel empowered. I think, my initial thought was a little bit just scared. And I think a lot of people feel scared maybe because we don't understand business. And so, then when I started to feel empowered when I realized that I still have the choice to get around people who do understand business. We have the internet, we have YouTube, we have coaches, right, who can teach us these skills. So I went from this limited mindset of, well, I don't know the skills, to thinking, well, I'm a human being and I can learn new things. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, back to your initial question, I think if there's a couple of things I've learned about business, and honestly, I want to frame this for, you might be in business way, way, way ahead of me. And that's great. If you are, I celebrate you. Hopefully you'll be able to hear something today that resonates for you, but especially for those new upcoming entrepreneurs, those ones who are really trying to figure it out. Here's a couple of things that I think might be able to help you. The first thing is that failure is your friend. And I actually really believe that. Like, now, when you go through failure, it does not feel like your friend. You're like, this is freaking horrible, right? But when you actually come out the other side, if you can learn the things that the failure is seeking to teach you, that will be a game changer for you. I actually believe that what holds us back is not the economy, and not the inflation rate, and not the interest rates, and not all the things. I know that all of those are factors, but what holds most people back is the fear of failure. It's kind of like, well, what happens if I try, if I put it all out there, if I invest my time, my energy, the most precious resources I've got, maybe even some money, and what if I fall flat on my face? Have you ever known anyone who's experienced that?
Yeah, myself, and I'm still alive. So yeah, I remember when I was 23, I started my first business. I had no idea what I was doing, and I wanted to share it with people. And I remember sharing it with someone who basically was just telling me how stupid that was and blah, blah, blah. Well, my self-image was so low that I was so hurt by that. I didn't say anything to another person for another year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you're dealing with, right? Like you're actually dealing with your self-worth, you're dealing with the opinions of other people, you're dealing with even your own self-doubt. Like no one has to sabotage me. I can sabotage me all by myself just fine, right? Yeah. And you put all of that together, and so it's hard, right? But the thing that you want to try to think about is not, I'm aiming for perfection, therefore if I don't hit that, I failed. But that, and I know, again, this is like sort of trite, cliche, whatever, but it's, I'm aiming today to make progress. So what does progress need to look like for you? You comparing yourself to Warren Buffett or, Alex Hormozi, or you comparing yourself to whoever happens to be your fanboy idol guy of the present day is actually not what you're looking for. You're trying to think, where am I at right now? What's my starting point? And how can I move further than I did yesterday? And that actually has been a game changer for me, because I can't control the past. I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but today is what I've got. And if I can literally look at it through the lens of KPIs and measurables and with data and sort of intangible and tangible factors, progressively make a difference in terms of how far I get, that's really all that matters, because I'm not competing with you. You're not competing with me. And actually, that means I get to cheer you on. I get to celebrate your success as much as I hope that you would celebrate mine.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. There's enough for everyone.
There is. Yes. There's enough for everybody. And so, like, if you're that entrepreneur who's wrestling with the fear of failure, I would really encourage you to just cut yourself some slack and recognize that the better version of you is probably more realistic than the best version of you. So stop trying to look for the best version of you and settle for the better version of you, but that version of you is awesome. And so it's okay. I think the second thing that I discovered in my own journey was that relationships matter. I went through a period of time in my early days of entrepreneurship where I was so excited about entrepreneuring, and I thought, oh, this is so cool. And then, you get around people who are like, oh, entrepreneurship, and we're all like a bunch of freaky entrepreneurs together. But what I didn't know is that there's actually people who are waiting for you and who will take advantage of you. And so that happened to me. And I can tell you one story, and it's actually a funny story now that I think about it. But at the time, like, it was horrible. My marriage had ended. I had, given everything to my ex-wife. I had like nothing except for I had good credit, because I had always, paid my bills and done all of the things that you need to do to get good credit. And so I started working with this guy, and he was a stucco guy. I didn't even know actually what stucco was when I started working for him. And so he ran a stucco contracting company. He asked me to be his sales manager. And I thought, well, I can sell anything. Up until that point, I had only been a pastor. But let me promise you, if you can sell religion, then you can sell anything, right? And so here I am, I'm like out there selling stucco. And actually, in 2 months, I crushed it. I sold more, jobs than he had sold in the past year. And then an interesting thing happened to me. He was paying me, and I was making some good money. And then one time he said, Abe, I need you to stop at this place and pick up some materials. And so I said, hey, no problem. And so I dropped by to pick up some materials. And he said, you can just pay for it on my account, leave it on my account, tell him it's for me. And I thought, okay, no problem. So as I was, trying to pick up the materials, the guy's like, how are you going to pay for this? And I'm like, well, the guy's name was Peter. He said I could just put it on his account. And he said, oh no, he doesn't have an account with us. And so I phoned Peter and I said, what am I going to do? And he said, well, just put it on your credit card. And so I'm like, okay, when are you going to reimburse me? He's like, oh, don't worry. I'll write you a check for that like right away. So, first time he did, and he wrote me a check. But then this became like a recurring pattern. Like I was either making a sales call or I was dropping by the supply store to get supplies. And after another 3 months of this, now I had $50,000 worth of his bills on my credit card. And then the guy completely bailed. And a few months after that, ended up going to jail on an assault charge. And I knew nothing about all of this stuff, but he was a horrible person. And, and I could sit here all day, even now, years later, and blame him because at that point, my finances were so shaky. And that was the last thing I needed was $50,000 on my credit card bill that I had no capacity to pay. But that's what happened. And yet, rather than looking at him and saying he's a horrible person because the universe, God, the prison system, is taking care of him, I had to own the fact that I had allowed myself to get into some partnerships that weren't really to my benefit, and that was a hard lesson. So then I went through another season where then I'm like, well, I don't trust anybody. And I walked around with my little guarded heart and my guarded wallet. And I was walking around like, oh, Mr. Precious, like I can't trust anybody because people are going to hurt me and I don't want to be hurt again. And then that wasn't good, right? So it's kind of like you go from, I'm super naive. Yeah, you can use my credit card to buy your stucco supplies to, I don't even want to trust you. Like you just told me your name is Shay, but I don't believe you because that's probably a lie,
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to say that I've been able to find a really happy middle ground. And the middle ground for me is I really look at sort of three things. And if you're a business person, like, let me promise you, your destiny and your future is not just in you, it is in strategic relationships. Like, yeah, there is a part that is just on you. Absolutely. You got to take care of your business, but you will only evolve as far as you can on your own without partnerships. And that's not far enough because you're called to more. So you need people, and people need you, by the way. They also need the gifts and the talents that you have. So I kind of have a 3-part lens now. The first lens is I actually look a little bit at the vibe. And I know that sounds like a little bit mystical, but let's get the mystical stuff out of the way first. And by vibe, what I mean is, like, there are some people, they say your name and you want to throw yourself off a building. Do you know what I mean, right? It's like, make it stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be around those people. And that's probably like personality. You can call it vibe, you can call it their energy, you can call it whatever. I found that sometimes I fought that. I love everybody, but I don't like everybody. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's 100% okay. So, I mean, the good news for me is I have a really wide like circle. Like, I find like I can almost like anybody. I'm 100% okay with all the religions and all the ethnicities and all the foods and all the perspectives and all the different personality types. Like, well, I take it all. And so I don't have this really wide circle of people I don't like. It's actually the opposite. But I have to at least have that. I think the second thing I found, and this one is more less about personality, and it's more about that person's character, and that's the idea of values, because values ultimately drive behavior. And so I watch people's track record. I don't mean like their track record a decade ago, because people can change. But I'm talking like their track record like 5 minutes ago when they showed me or they told me who they are. And then I don't believe them because I'm like, well, no, I got to believe and trust people. But if people lack sort of character, if they lack self-respect, if they lack respect for others, if they lack just sort of decency and kindness, I just don't want to do it. Like, because then I'm never going to trust what they say. And I don't have the time to run around auditing people. I don't have the time to be stalking them to make sure they're going to keep their word. I want to know that we're on the same page. And that sort of takes me to the third thing. So I start with vibe, and then I go to values, and then I go to vision. So ultimately, like, where are you headed? Now, that doesn't mean, like, I'll take you and I as an example. Like, obviously, we have different visions for our lives, and that is 100% cool. But like, if directionally, like, you're like 100% going over here, and I'm like 100% going over there, well, then there's just no way any kind of partnership or collaboration can work. It's just not that it's right or wrong. It's just, how can two people partner if ultimately I'm going to be this person and you're going to be there?
Yep.
And I think sometimes, like, I've discovered with myself, like, I'll look at the first two things, the vibe and the values, and I'm like, yeah, but all that stuff lines up so much. Like, this could be great. But ultimately, if that vision thing isn't there, then you're kind of setting the relationship up for failure. This happens in marriages too. Like how many times do people get into a marriage and then they wake up one day and they realize, like, I've evolved into a completely different person than I was when this thing started. And it's not even that person is bad and you're good. It's not about that. It's actually just, we're at such different places in our lives. How can we actually function? And so, I hope for entrepreneurs who are contemplating partnerships, I think, answer is yes, contemplate them, because they'll make you better, they'll make you sharper, they'll make you faster, they'll make you stronger, but really, really don't rush into it. Don't be like I was, and that was kind of just stupid and naive.
I love that. Wow, so much wisdom.
Wow.
I might take that into relationships too.
Yeah, like, it's tough, right? Because like, we so desperately need relationships. I'll just, again, speak to myself. Like, we are all a little broken, or at least I am. And what that means is you're kind of vulnerable. When someone comes along and they give you some affirmation and it feels good, but then, and that's cool, like that connection, but you always have to say, ultimately, where's this going to take me? So first thing I think for entrepreneurs is the fear of failure. Second is partnerships. But can I say the third one is to develop the art of strategic thinking. So, interestingly, when you're in a survival mindset, so imagine a person who is like literally just making enough money each month to survive. And listen, man, all due respect to you. So there's no judgment here. Like, I've been there. And so you have as much money as month. You know what I mean? Like, whatever your bills are for that month, you're literally just taking in just enough, or maybe just a little bit less. What ends up happening to your thinking process is that actually distorts your thinking. And it's kind of not your fault, because it's called a survival mindset or a survival mentality. But when you start to get into a business, what happens is there's a lot of months where your monthly cash flow does not equal your monthly expenditure. In other words, you're spending way more than you're taking in. And then what you can actually end up running your business with is a hardcore survival mentality. And it is not good, because you're no longer able to tap into creativity. You're no longer able to tap into innovation. You're no longer able to let the best of you come out. Like, it's not you at your worst that's going to attract people to your business, right? Of course not. It's you at your best. That's where the good in you is. But, again, lots of empathy. Like, I've been there. When you're in a survival place, it's like, wow, you start to make decisions that are very short term, because you just have to get through the next moment. And actually, I was saying to you the other day that, well, I'll get to that in a moment, but I realized this about myself, because I'm a street kid, and I grew up in poverty. And it's funny, because as far as I've come in so many ways, but I still find myself going back to that street mentality all the time. And that's even like how I see myself. Like, it's so funny, because sometimes I look in the mirror and I literally have to say, Abe, you're not that kid anymore. And what happens to me is I get out of the mindset of abundance that I have now. And that has totally been proven in our businesses and all the things that we've done. But the mindset still struggles to catch up. And what I said to you the other day is, I'm taking my daughter, my wife and I, we bought a place in the US. And, if you're in Canada, in a cold place like Canada, you want to buy a place where it's warm. And my wife's about to have a baby in January. And so we have an 8-year-old daughter, and I'm going to take her on a daddy-daughter date for 5-6 days to our place in the US. And we're going to enjoy the warmth together before the baby comes. And it's funny because when that mindset is what's lighting up my life, that mindset of abundance, that mindset of I'm blessed, it's amazing how much better a business person I am when I'm in that mindset. But then just like that, I can get a phone call or an email or a text message from somebody and I can be right back to the little street guy mindset. And it's like, oh man, I got to fight to survive. Here we go again. And so what I'm, sort of saying to you as an entrepreneur, notice when you're in a survival mindset, don't judge it. Don't beat up on yourself. That's not going to help, but notice it. And then ask yourself, okay, how do I get into more of an abundance mindset here? How do I get into more of a thriving mindset? Could I go from surviving to thriving? Absolutely. And if I do that, then I'm going to be more creative. People are going to want to be around me, and probably my business is going to go a lot better than it would.
I love that. And anything else?
Not from me, but how about you? What have you learned about business?
Well, I've learned a lot from you over, the last little bit that we've been working together and part of coaching. I think what I found is that being a lone ranger is very lonely. And so I also found mental health wise, being around community, we all get in a rut. We all come we have stumbling blocks or just mental barriers. And what I've found since being in community, being around other entrepreneurs is that my mental health is so much better. I just think, okay, if I'm in a little rut, I get out of it a lot quicker because I have people around me who are building my faith when my faith feels low. Right. And we can all help each other. So I definitely have seen value in all of that. Even when you were saying failing forward, definitely, I always thought that as such a bad thing, but now that I've seen and I see people and how they fail and how they keep going, it's like I still have that initial maybe embarrassment or, oh man, why did I do that? But then I quickly remind myself, no, that means I'm progressing. That means I am getting to the next step. And so being able to see that in other people has helped me apply that in my life so much more than I used to. Yeah. So yeah, I think everything you said is so valuable. I've learned so much from you and the team. I'm just so grateful. And I guess we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And, let me just say that was brilliant what you just said, because especially if you're a starting entrepreneur or you're kind of new into that. And by that, I mean anyone who's in the first 5 years, because let's be honest, it's tough the first 5 years. But that was sort of like you're saying, Shay, pay attention to your mental health. Don't let your mental health get dragged down, because it's easy, especially if you already have some mental health sort of challenges, right? So love yourself, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and keep going. So thank you for tuning into the Flourishing Podcast. We're so grateful for your time, for your attention. Please subscribe, give us a positive review, and share this if you can with your friends. Even your enemies would love this podcast. Thank you so much.